The alarm clock buzzed at exactly 5:30 in the morning, just like every other day for the past 3 years. Kim Woo-jin rolled out of his small bunk and rubbed his tired eyes. Outside his tiny quarters, the deep space mining station hummed with its usual mechanical sounds. The Seoul Prosperity was a massive ship, home to over 2,000 crew members, but Woo-jin knew most of them would never notice him. He pulled on his gray maintenance uniform and grabbed his cleaning cart from the storage closet. The cart was old, and one wheel squeaked loudly as he pushed it down the empty corridors. Most people were still sleeping at this hour, which was exactly how Woo-jin liked it. Less people meant less awkward conversations about why a 34-year-old man was pushing a mop around a starship. His first stop was always the mess hall. The night shift workers had left their usual mess behind. Food trays scattered across, tables, spilled drinks on the floor, and crumbs everywhere. Woo-jin moved quietly between the tables, wiping down surfaces and collecting garbage. The work was simple and peaceful. Nobody bothered him here. As he mopped the floor, his mind wandered to his old life. 5 years ago, he had been Lieutenant Kim Woo-jin, tactical engineer in the Human Defense Corps. He had designed battle formations and calculated enemy movements. But that life was over now. One mistake, one decision that saved lives but broke. Regulations had ended his military career. Now he cleaned floors and fixed broken air recyclers. The mess hall took him 2 hours to clean properly. By the time he finished, the early morning shift was starting to arrive for breakfast. Woo-jin pushed his cart toward the elevator, heading to his next stop. The bridge levels were always his most careful work. Command officers expected everything to be perfect up there. The elevator ride to Deck 12 gave him a few minutes of quiet. Woo-jin closed his eyes and listened to the ship's sounds. After 3 years, he could tell when something was wrong just by the way the engines hummed. Today, something felt different. There was tension in the air that he could not quite explain. When the elevator doors opened, he immediately heard voices coming from the main conference room. The door was slightly open, and angry words spilled out into the corridor. Woo-jin hesitated. He was supposed to clean that room, but it sounded like an important meeting was happening. "The long-range sensors do not lie," a woman's voice said, sharply. Woo-jin recognized Lieutenant Park So-young's voice. She was one of the few officers who actually acknowledged him when they passed in the hallways. "The fleet is moving toward the outer colonies. Their ships are massive." "How many vessels?" asked another voice. This one belonged to Captain Rodriguez. "The station commander. At least 300 confirmed contacts. Possibly more. They are still too far away for detailed scans." Woo-jin quietly pushed his cart closer to the door. He knew he should not listen, but something about their tone made him worried. In his old life, he would have been inside that room helping to plan their response. Now he could only listen from outside. "Have we contacted the Valkyrie delegation?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "Yes, sir. Commander Jektal is on his way to the meeting. The Thuman leader Quillian is also coming." Woo-jin knew about the alien delegations. The Seoul Prosperity was not just a mining station. It was also a research facility where humans worked alongside 2 alien species. The Valkyrie looked like giant insects with 4 arms and compound eyes. The Thuman were tall, crystalline beings who could speak directly into your mind. Both species had their own ships docked at the station. The conference room door suddenly swung open wider. Woo-jin quickly started mopping the floor, trying to look busy. Lieutenant Park So-young stepped out and nearly walked into his cart. "Oh, sorry, Woo-jin," she said, looking distracted. "Can you clean the conference room later? We have an emergency meeting." "Of course, Lieutenant," Woo-jin replied quietly. He started to push his cart away, but stopped when he heard heavy footsteps approaching. The Valkyrie commander was coming down the corridor, his 4 arms moving in agitated gestures. Behind him floated Quillian, the Thuman leader, whose crystal body caught the corridor lights and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. "Captain Rodriguez," Jektal clicked in his translated voice. We must discuss immediate evacuation procedures. My people remember stories of the Devourers. If it is truly them approaching, we have very little time. The Devourers. Wu Jin had never heard that name before, but the way the alien commander said it made his skin crawl. He pretended to clean a nearby wall panel while the three commanders entered the conference room. The door closed behind them, but Wu Jin could still hear muffled voices through the walls. He continued his cleaning routine on the bridge levels, but his mind was racing. An unknown fleet approaching. Talk of evacuation. The name Devourers, spoken with obvious fear. His old tactical training was kicking in, analyzing the fragments of information he had overheard. 2 hours later, he was cleaning the observation deck when alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the captain's voice echoed from the speakers. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. All civilian staff report to designated safe areas immediately. Through the large windows of the observation deck, Wu Jin could see the alien ships docked at the station suddenly coming to life. The Velkari bioship started glowing with internal light, while the crystal Thuman vessels began to hum with energy. In the distance, he could see other human ships moving into defensive positions, but something was wrong with the alien movements. Instead of forming battle lines, they seemed to be preparing to run. The Velkari ships were moving toward the outer docking bays, and the Thuman vessels were charging their long-range travel systems. Only the human ships appeared to be taking defensive positions. Dr. Lee Hyun-woo, one of the research scientists, came running down the corridor. He was usually calm and professional, but now his face was pale with worry. "Wu Jin," he called out. "Have you seen the tactical displays? The aliens are evacuating. Both species are preparing to leave the system." "Why would they run from a fight?" Wu Jin asked, forgetting to keep his voice quiet and respectful. Dr. Lee stopped and looked at him with surprise. "You understand tactical situations?" Wu Jin realized his mistake. Maintenance workers were not supposed to ask strategic questions. "I just wondered why they would leave us here alone." "The aliens say this enemy has fought them before. Apparently, entire worlds have been consumed. They call them the Devourers because they literally eat planets." Dr. Lee shook his head. "Our human commanders want to fight, but the aliens insist that running is the only option." As if summoned by their conversation, another alarm rang through. The ship. This time the message was different. "Unknown fleet has entered the outer system. All combat personnel to battle stations. Estimated time to contact 6 hours." Wu Jin looked out the window again. The alien ships were already starting to undock from the station. Whatever was coming, the Velkari and Thuman were so afraid that they were abandoning their human allies. But the human ships continued to form defensive lines around the mining colonies. 6 hours until contact with an enemy that scared 2 advanced alien species into running away. Wu Jin pushed his cleaning cart toward the storage closet, but his mind was no longer thinking about mopping floors. His old tactical instincts were awakening, and he found himself calculating fleet positions and defensive strategies. He was just a janitor now, but somewhere in the back of his mind, Lieutenant Kim Wu Jin was starting to plan for war. 3 hours had passed since the first alarm. Wu Jin tried to continue his cleaning routine, but the ship was in chaos. Crew members ran through the corridors carrying equipment and shouting orders. The normal schedule meant nothing now. He pushed his cart toward the main tactical center, hoping to clean the area before the real fighting started. But when he arrived, he found the room packed with officers staring at massive display screens. The screens showed dozens of red dots moving through space toward their position. "Sir, the alien fleet is bigger than we first thought," reported Lieutenant Park So-young. Her voice was steady, but Wu Jin could hear the worry underneath. "We now count over 500 enemy ships. Some of them are the size of small moons." "Captain." Rodriguez stood in the center of the room, his hands behind his back. "What about our allies? Are the Velkari and Thuman forces ready to coordinate our defense? The room went quiet. Everyone looked uncomfortable. Finally, Commander Chen spoke up. Sir, both alien delegations have requested immediate departure clearance. They say fighting the Devourers is impossible. Impossible? Captain Rodriguez turned around sharply. We have nearly 800 ships in this system, human, Velkari, and Thuman combined. That should be enough firepower to handle any threat. The aliens disagree, sir. Commander Jektal says his people encountered the Devourers 50 years ago. They lost 90% of their fleet before escaping. The Thuman leader Quillian has similar stories from their ancient records. Wu Jin quietly moved his cart to a corner and started wiping down a computer terminal. Nobody paid attention to him, but he could hear every word. His old military training helped him understand the tactical situation. The humans wanted to fight, but their allies were running away. That left only 300 human ships against 500 enemy vessels. The main display screen suddenly lit up with new information. A communication signal was coming from the approaching fleet. Captain Rodriguez nodded to his communications officer. Put it on the main speakers. A deep, horrible sound filled the room. It was not exactly a voice, but somehow everyone understood the message. The sound seemed to crawl inside their heads and speak directly to their minds. We are the Devourers. We consume all life. Surrender your worlds, and your ships will be destroyed quickly. Resist, and we will feed on your suffering for generations. The message ended, leaving the tactical center in complete silence. Several officers looked pale. One young ensign was actually shaking. Captain Rodriguez was the first to speak. Well, that was unpleasant. Communications, send a reply. Tell them we decline their generous offer. Sir? The communications officer looked confused. You heard me. Tell them no. We don't surrender our colonies to anyone. As the captain's message was sent, alarms started ringing again. This time they were coming from the docking bay levels. Wu Jin realized what was happening. The alien ships were leaving. Sir, both Velkari and Thuman fleets are departing the system, reported Lieutenant Park So-young. They say they will remember our courage, but they cannot stay to fight the Devourers. Through the tactical center's windows, Wu Jin could see the alien ships moving away from the station. The insect-like Velkari vessels glowed brighter as they prepared for long-distance travel. The crystal Thuman ships were already fading from view as they activated their advanced speed systems. Cowards, muttered one of the human officers, but Wu Jin was not so sure. In his old life as a tactical engineer, he had learned that running away was sometimes the smart choice. If two advanced alien species were afraid of this enemy, maybe the humans should listen. The tactical displays updated again. Now they showed only human ships preparing to defend the mining colonies. 300 vessels against 500. The odds were not good. Captain Rodriguez studied the display for several minutes. All right, people, it looks like we are on our own. Begin. Defensive Formation Alpha. All civilian ships should evacuate to the inner colonies. The room exploded into activity as officers started coordinating the defense. Wu Jin continued cleaning, but he was also watching the tactical screens. The human fleet was forming traditional battle lines, just like the Defense Corps textbooks taught. It was smart and professional, but something bothered him about it. As he wiped down another computer terminal, he noticed something strange on one of the smaller displays. It showed detailed scans of the approaching Devourer fleet. Their ships were not moving in normal formation either. Instead, they seemed to flow like water, constantly changing position and speed. Excuse me, a voice said behind him. Wu Jin turned around to see Quillian, the Thuman leader. The crystal being had not left with the rest of their ships. Their tall body caught the room's lights and created small rainbows on the walls. You are the maintenance worker, Quillian said. Their voice appeared directly in Wu Jin's mind, which was how the Thuman communicated. I have observed you watching our tactical displays. Wu Jin felt nervous. Sorry, I was just cleaning. I did not mean to get in the way. You were not in the way. In fact, you were studying the enemy formation patterns. Most interesting for someone who empties garbage containers. Several officers had turned to look at them now. Wu Jin felt embarrassed to be the center of attention. I should continue my work. Wait, Quillian moved closer. My people have telepathic abilities. I can sense thoughts and emotions from other beings. You have a military mind, do you not? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Wu Jin looked around the room at all the officers staring at him. He wanted to deny it and return to his simple life of cleaning floors. But something about the Thumon's crystal eyes made him tell the truth. I used to be Lieutenant Kim Wu Jin, tactical engineer, Human Defense Corps. But that was 5 years ago. The room went completely quiet. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward with a confused expression. Lieutenant, why are you working as a janitor on my station? Because I made a mistake, sir. I disobeyed orders during a mission. People died because of my decisions. I was discharged and decided civilian life was better. Quillian's crystal body hummed with soft music, which meant they were thinking hard. This is very interesting. Captain Rodriguez, may I speak frankly about your tactical situation? Go ahead. Your human fleet is forming excellent traditional battle lines. Your officers clearly understand standard military strategy. But the Devourers are not a standard enemy. They do not fight like normal armies. Captain Rodriguez crossed his arms. What do you mean? My people and the Velkari are what you humans call hive minds. We think collectively and follow established patterns. When we encountered the Devourers, we used our best military strategies. We failed completely because the Devourers do not follow any patterns. They think individually and change tactics constantly. Wu Jin found himself nodding, like water flowing around rocks. Exactly. Quillian turned their crystal head toward him. You understand. Your species is different from ours. Humans think individually. You adapt and improvise. This is why we are running and you are choosing to fight. Lieutenant Park So-young looked confused. Are you saying our individual thinking is an advantage? It might be your only advantage, Quillian replied. The Devourers expect their enemies to follow predictable group strategies. But humans might be unpredictable enough to surprise them. Captain Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he looked directly at Wu Jin. Lieutenant Kim, or should I say Mr. Kim, what do you think about our current defensive formation? Wu Jin felt the weight of everyone's attention. Part of him wanted to make an excuse and leave with his cleaning cart. But another part, the part that had been a tactical engineer, wanted to answer honestly. The formation is textbook perfect, sir. Any military academy would give it high marks. But if the enemy does not follow textbook rules, then maybe we should not either. Explain. Wu Jin moved closer to the main tactical display. Look at how their ships move. They are not maintaining set distances or formations. They flow and adapt constantly. If we sit in fixed battle lines, they will just flow around us and attack our weakest points. So what would you suggest? The question surprised him. 5 years ago, his suggestions had gotten people killed. But now, with 500 enemy ships approaching, maybe his unconventional thinking could help instead of hurt. I would need to study their movement patterns more carefully, sir. But my first thought is that we should stop thinking like a military fleet and start thinking like something else entirely. Quillian's crystal body chimed with approval. This is exactly what I hope to hear. Captain Rodriguez, this maintenance worker might be your best tactical resource. As if summoned by their conversation, new alarms began ringing throughout the ship. The Devourer fleet had increased speed and would arrive in just 2 hours instead of 6. The real battle was about to begin. The Devourer fleet arrived like a nightmare made real. Their ships were not built like normal vessels. Instead of metal and clean lines, they looked alive. Organic curves twisted through space, and strange lights pulsed along their surfaces like giant heartbeats. Wu Jin stood in the tactical center watching the main display screen. The human fleet had formed their defensive lines exactly as trained. 300 ships arranged in perfect military formation. It looked impressive and professional. It also looked completely useless. The Devourers did not charge forward like a normal attacking fleet. Instead, their ships spread out like spilled water, flowing around and between the human formations. Some Devourer vessels moved fast while others moved slow. Some attacked from above while others came from below. There was no pattern to predict or counter. All ships maintain formation, Captain Rodriguez commanded into his communication device. Do not break ranks to chase individual targets, but the human fleet was already in trouble. The Devourers were not trying to fight a traditional battle. They were surrounding the human ships and picking them off one by one. Red lights started appearing on the tactical display as human vessels were destroyed or disabled. Sir, we have lost 12 ships in the first 10 minutes, reported Lieutenant Park So-young. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking as she worked at her control station. Maintain formation, the captain repeated. But even he looked worried now. Wu Jin watched the battle develop with growing horror. His old tactical training told him exactly what was happening. The human commanders were fighting the battle they had trained for, but the enemy was fighting a completely different battle. It was like trying to catch smoke with a fishing net. Captain, he said quietly, not now, Mr. Kim. We are in the middle of a battle. Sir, the formation is not working. We are losing ships every minute. Captain Rodriguez turned around with an angry expression. I said not now. Return to your duties. But before Wu Jin could respond, a massive explosion lit up the main screen. The human battleship Korea's Pride had been surrounded by 6 Devourer vessels. They attacked it from all sides at once, and the proud ship died in seconds. 20 ships lost, Lieutenant Park reported. The enemy is concentrating on our heavy cruisers. Quillian, who had stayed in the tactical center, moved closer to Captain Rodriguez. Captain, your fleet is dying. Perhaps it is time to listen to unconventional ideas. Another explosion, another human ship destroyed. The tactical display showed their defensive formation breaking apart as ships tried to escape the Devourer attacks. 30 ships lost, came the report. Captain Rodriguez stared at the display for a long moment. Around him, his officers worked frantically at their stations, but nothing they tried seemed to help. The human fleet was being systematically destroyed. Finally, the captain looked directly at Wu Jin. All right, Mr. Kim. You have 5 minutes. Tell me what you see that we do not. Wu Jin moved to the main tactical display. His heart was beating fast, but his mind felt clear for the first time in 5 years. Sir, look at how they move. The Devourers are not fighting like a military force. They are fighting like a living organism. Explain. Watch this group of enemy ships here. Wu Jin pointed to a section of the display. They moved fast to attack our left flank. But when our ships turned to face them, these other Devourer ships attacked from behind. It was not planned coordination. It was instinct. Instinct? Like a pack of wolves hunting, or white blood cells attacking an infection. They do not need orders or formations because they react to what they see moment by moment. Lieutenant Park So-young looked up from her station. 40 ships lost, sir. Captain Rodriguez's face went pale. In less than 30 minutes, they had lost over 10% of their fleet. At this rate, the entire human force would be destroyed. Within hours. So how do we fight an enemy with no pattern? The captain asked. Wu Jin studied the tactical display carefully. We stop trying to be a military fleet and become something else, something they have never encountered before. Such as a virus. The room went quiet except for the sounds of the battle continuing outside. Everyone stared at Wu Jin as if he had said something crazy. A virus, sir, he continued. Instead of fighting them like an army, we spread out like an infection. Small groups of ships moving independently. No central coordination, no predictable patterns, just human crews making individual decisions and adapting to whatever happens. That sounds like chaos, said Commander Chen. Exactly. Controlled chaos. The Devourers expect us to act like the Velkari and Thuman. Organized, predictable, following group strategies. But what if we do the opposite? What if every ship captain makes their own decisions? Quillian's crystal body chimed with excitement. This could work. Humans excel at individual problem-solving under pressure. The Devourers would not know how to respond to 300 independent threats. Another alarm sounded. The tactical display showed more red lights as additional human ships were destroyed. They were running out of time to try anything different. 50 ships lost, reported Lieutenant Park. Captain Rodriguez closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his expression was grim but determined. All right, Mr. Kim, I am going to do something that goes against every regulation in the book. I am putting you in charge of fleet tactical coordination. Sir, I am not qualified for that position. Nobody is qualified for this situation. But you seem to understand the enemy better than any of us. The captain turned to his communications. Officer, send a message to all ship captains. Tell them we are abandoning standard formation tactics. From now on, each ship is authorized to act independently using their own judgment. Sir, that could create complete chaos. Good. Maybe chaos is exactly what we need. The communications officer looked confused but followed orders. Within minutes, the human fleet began to change. Ships broke away from their organized lines and scattered throughout the battle area. Instead of maintaining proper military distances, they started moving in random patterns. The results were immediate and dramatic. The Devourer ships, which had been flowing around the human formations like water, suddenly seemed confused. They were used to fighting organized enemies, but now they faced 300 separate threats acting unpredictably. Wu Jin, Captain Rodriguez said, you are now acting fleet tactical coordinator. What are your orders? The weight of command settled on Wu Jin's shoulders like a heavy blanket. 5 years ago, his unconventional thinking had gotten people killed. Now he had to trust that same thinking to save what remained of the human fleet. All ships, he said into the communications device, forget everything you learned in military academy. Do not try to work together. Do not follow standard attack patterns. Just survive and cause as much damage as you can. Think of yourselves as individual predators, not as part of a formation. On the tactical display, the battle began to change. Human ships started attacking from unexpected directions. They used asteroid fields for cover, something military doctrine said never to do. They attacked in pairs or alone, whatever felt right to each captain. The Devourers, for the first time since the battle began, seemed uncertain. Their flowing, organic movement became hesitant. They had evolved to fight organized enemies, but individual human creativity was something completely new. Sir, Lieutenant Park said with amazement in her voice, we have stopped losing ships. The destruction rate has dropped to almost nothing. More than that, added Commander Chen, we are actually starting to win small engagements. 3 Devourer. Ships have been destroyed in the last 10 minutes. Wu Jin felt a moment of hope, but he knew the real battle was just beginning. They had surprised the enemy, but the Devourers would adapt quickly. The humans needed a bigger plan if they wanted to survive. Captain, he said, this is buying us time, but we need to do something decisive. The Devourers will figure out how to fight individual ships eventually. What do you suggest? Wu Jin looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of ships scattered across space. Somewhere in that chaos, he needed to find a way to win a battle, against impossible odds. The old Wu Jin would have followed regulations and proper procedure, but the new Wu Jin was learning to trust human instinct and individual creativity. I have an idea, sir, but you are really not going to like it. Captain Rodriguez looked at Wu Jin with tired eyes. The battle had been going for 6 hours now, and while the human fleet had stopped dying quickly, they were still outnumbered and surrounded. Tell me your idea. Acting Coordinator Kim, Wu Jin, pointed to a section of the tactical display. Sir, Look at the mining equipment we have in this system. Those industrial ships have tools designed to break apart asteroids and process raw materials. What does mining equipment have to do with fighting the Devourers? Everything, sir. I have been watching how the enemy ships move. They are alive, which means they use organic systems to coordinate their attacks. But organic systems can be disrupted. Lieutenant Park So-young looked up from her station. You want to use mining equipment as weapons? Not exactly. I want to use the mining equipment to create something the Devourers have never seen before, an electromagnetic storm. The room went quiet except for the continuing battle sounds from the speakers. Wu Jin continued quickly before anyone could object. The industrial ships have massive plasma mining lasers designed to cut through solid rock. If we coordinate them properly, we can create electromagnetic pulses that will disrupt the Devourer's organic neural networks. Commander Chen shook his head. That is completely theoretical. We have no proof that electromagnetic fields will affect their ships. We have no proof that anything else will work either, Wu Jin replied. But I spent 3 years maintaining the mining equipment on this station. Those plasma systems are incredibly powerful when used together. Captain Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Outside, human ships continued their chaotic individual battles with the Devourer forces. The new tactics were keeping losses low, but they were not winning the war. How would this electromagnetic storm work? The captain asked. Wu Jin moved to the tactical display and started pointing to different areas. We have 12 heavy mining ships in the outer asteroid belt. If we position them in a circle around the main Devourer force and coordinate their plasma bursts, we can create overlapping electromagnetic fields. And you think that will stop them? I think it will confuse them. Their ships communicate through organic neural networks, just like living creatures. A strong enough electromagnetic pulse should disrupt those networks temporarily. Quillian moved closer to the display. This idea has potential. My people use crystalline communication systems, which are also vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. If the Devourers use similar organic networks, this could work. There is one problem, said Lieutenant Park. The mining ships are slow and lightly armed. They would be sitting targets while they position themselves around the enemy. Wu Jin nodded. That is where our scattered fleet comes in. While the Devourers are focused on fighting our individual ship attacks, the mining vessels could move into position without being noticed. And if this does not work, then we lose anyway, sir. But at least we would be trying something the enemy does not expect. Captain Rodriguez looked around the tactical center at his officers. They all looked exhausted and worried, but also desperate enough to try almost anything. The traditional military approach had failed completely. Maybe it was time for something unprecedented. All right, Coordinator Kim. Send orders to all mining vessels. Tell them to begin moving to the outer engagement zone. And get me Captain Choi Min-ho from the industrial ship Seoul Mining. If anyone can make this crazy plan work, it would be him. Within minutes, Captain Choi's face appeared on the communication screen. He was a short, practical man who had spent 20 years operating mining equipment in dangerous conditions. Captain Rodriguez, my ships are already moving toward the battle zone. Your coordinator Kim sent us some very interesting technical specifications for coordinating our plasma systems. Can you do what he is asking? The theory is sound. We have done similar coordination work when processing large asteroids, but never while people were shooting at us. Captain Choi looked directly at Wu Jin through the screen. Are you sure about the electromagnetic pulse calculations? As sure as I can be without testing it first, Wu Jin replied. Good enough for me. Give us 30 minutes to get into position. The next half hour was the longest of Wu Jin's life. On the tactical display, he could see the mining ships slowly moving through space toward their target positions. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued their chaotic individual attacks, keeping the Devourers busy and distracted. Sir, all mining vessels are in position, reported Lieutenant Park. Enemy forces are concentrated in Grid Section 77, added Commander Chen. Wu Jin looked at the tactical display one more time. 12 mining ships formed a rough circle around the main Devourer force. If his calculations were wrong, those ships would be destroyed in minutes. But if he was right, they might have a chance. Captain Choi, are your ships ready for coordinated plasma burst on my signal? Ready, Coordinator Kim. All fleet ships prepare to take advantage of enemy confusion. When I give the word, hit them with everything you have. Wu Jin took a deep breath. 5 years ago, his tactical decisions had resulted in casualties and disgrace. Now he was about to make another decision that could save or doom the entire human fleet. Execute plasma burst now. On the tactical display, 12 bright flashes appeared as the mining ships fired their industrial plasma systems simultaneously. The coordinated energy burst created a massive electromagnetic wave that washed over the Devourer fleet like an invisible tsunami. For a moment, nothing happened. The enemy ships continued their flowing attack patterns as if nothing had changed. Wu Jin felt his heart sink. The plan had failed. Then suddenly, the Devourer formations began to fall apart. Their organic ships, which had moved like a coordinated organism throughout the battle, started drifting in random directions. Some ships stopped moving entirely. Others began spinning out of control. It worked, Lieutenant Park said with amazement. The electromagnetic pulse disrupted their coordination systems. All ships attack now, Wu Jin commanded. Hit them while they are confused. The human fleet, which had been fighting individual defensive battles for hours, suddenly went on the offensive. 300 ships converged on the disoriented Devourer, forces from every direction at once. The results were devastating. Devourer ships that had seemed nearly invincible when coordinated became easy targets when isolated and confused. Human weapons, which had barely dented the enemy formations before, now destroyed ship after ship. "Sir, we are winning," reported Commander Chen with disbelief in his voice. But Wu Jin was already studying the tactical display for the next problem. The electromagnetic pulse would not last forever. The Devourer ships would recover their coordination within minutes. The humans needed to press their advantage quickly. "Captain Choi, can your mining ships repeat the electromagnetic pulse? Give us 10 minutes to recharge the plasma systems." "We may not have 10 minutes. Enemy ships are already starting to regroup." As if to prove his point, several Devourer vessels suddenly accelerated toward the nearest mining ship. Their organic coordination was returning, and they had identified the source of their problems. "All fleet ships, protect the mining vessels," Wu Jin ordered. "Those ships are our only advantage." What followed was the strangest battle in human military history. Industrial mining ships, protected by military escorts, fought against living alien vessels using coordinated electromagnetic bursts. Human creativity and individual decision-making faced off against organic hive mind tactics. "Second electromagnetic pulse ready," reported Captain Choi. "Execute." Again, the Devourer forces fell into confusion as their organic neural networks were disrupted. And again, the human fleet pressed their attack, destroying dozens of enemy ships while they were helpless. "Sir, enemy forces are retreating," Lieutenant Park announced. "Remaining Devourer ships are moving toward the outer system." Wu Jin could hardly believe what he was hearing. The human fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, had actually won a major battle against the feared Devourers. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through creative thinking and unconventional tactics. "All ships, maintain pursuit but stay within support range of the mining vessels," he ordered. "Do not let them regroup and coordinate another attack." Captain Rodriguez walked over and put his hand on Wu Jin's shoulder. "Coordinator Kim, I think it is time we made your position official." "Congratulations, Admiral Kim." Admiral. The title felt strange after 5 years of pushing a cleaning cart and emptying garbage containers. But as Wu Jin looked at the tactical display showing the scattered remains of the Devourer fleet, he realized something important had changed. He was no longer running from his past mistakes. Instead, He was using everything he had learned, both as a military engineer and as a maintenance worker, to protect the people who depended on him. Thank you, sir. But this battle is not over yet. The Devourers will adapt to our tactics eventually. We need to be ready for their next attack. As if summoned by his words, new alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Long-range sensors had detected another Devourer fleet approaching from a different direction. This one was even larger than the first. The real war was just beginning. The second Devourer fleet was 3 times larger than the first. Admiral Kim Woo-jin stood in the tactical center staring at the display screen with growing concern. Over 1,500 enemy ships were approaching their position, and the human fleet had already lost 60 vessels in the previous battle. Sir, Dr. Lee Hyun-woo is requesting permission to address the command staff, reported Lieutenant Park So-young. He says the research team has discovered something important about the Devourers. Send him in. Dr. Lee entered the tactical center carrying a data tablet and looking worried. Admiral Kim, we have been analyzing the wreckage from the destroyed Devourer ships. What we found changes everything. Explain. The Devourers are not just attacking randomly. They are harvesting specific materials from each planet they consume. Rare quantum minerals that can only be found on inhabited worlds. Admiral Kim felt a cold chill run down his spine. What do they need those minerals for? We believe they are building something. Our deep space sensors have detected massive construction, activity in a system about 50 light-years from here. Whatever they are building, it is huge. Captain Rodriguez joined the conversation. How huge are we talking about? Dr. Lee activated his data tablet and showed them a series of images. Based on energy readings and material analysis, we estimate the structure is approximately the size of a small moon, and it appears to be some kind of weapon. A weapon that size could destroy entire star systems, Admiral Kim said quietly. Exactly. We think the Devourers are building a star-killer device. If they complete it, they could wipe out populated systems from hundreds of light-years away. The tactical center went completely quiet. Everyone understood the implications. Even if they successfully defended this system, the Devourers could simply retreat to their construction site and finish building their ultimate weapon. How long do we have before this weapon is completed? Admiral Kim asked. Based on the construction rate we have observed, perhaps 2 weeks, maybe less. Admiral Kim looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet. 240 human ships against 1,500 Devourer vessels. Even with their new electromagnetic tactics, the odds were terrible. But if they did nothing, the star-killer weapon would make the odds irrelevant. There is only one solution, he said finally. We have to attack their construction site and destroy the weapon before it becomes operational. Sir, that is impossible, Commander Chen objected. The construction site is 50 light-years away, deep in Devourer territory. We would never survive the journey. We would not survive staying here either. That second fleet will overwhelm us eventually, and then they will have all the time they need to finish their weapon. Lieutenant Park looked up from her station. Sir, even if we could reach their construction site, how would we destroy something the size of a moon? Admiral Kim was quiet for a long moment, thinking through the possibilities. His maintenance experience told him that every structure, no matter how large, had weak points. His military training suggested that the weapon would need massive power systems to function. Dr. Lee, what kind of power source would a weapon like this require? Something enormous. Probably a controlled quantum reaction using the materials they have been harvesting. The power core would need to be incredibly dense and stable, and if that power core became unstable, the entire structure would be destroyed in a matter of seconds. But Admiral, accessing the power core would require getting inside the construction site. That would be a suicide mission. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. He had suspected as much, but sometimes military leaders had to make impossible choices to protect the people they served. All right, here is what we are going to do. We need volunteers. For a deep strike mission into Devourer territory, the goal is to infiltrate their construction site and destroy the Star Killer weapon before it becomes operational. Sir, how could we possibly get past their defenses? Asked Captain Rodriguez. By using something they would never expect. We disguise our ships as captured vessels being brought to the construction site for processing. The idea was so crazy that everyone just stared at him. Finally, Commander Chen spoke up. You want to pretend to be prisoners? Exactly. The Devourers have been capturing ships throughout this war. They would not be suspicious of more captured vessels arriving at their construction site. Dr. Lee was nodding thoughtfully. It could work. We could modify several ships to look damaged and powerless. A small crew hidden inside could wait until they reach the construction site, then break out and sabotage the weapon. How small of a crew? Asked Lieutenant Park. Admiral Kim looked around the tactical center at the officers who had become his friends and colleagues over the past day. He knew what he had to ask of them, and he knew it was unfair. 12 people. That is the maximum we could hide inside a modified ship without being detected. And realistically, it would be a one-way mission. The chances of escape after destroying the weapon are very small. The room was silent for several minutes. Everyone understood what Admiral Kim was really asking. He needed volunteers for a suicide mission to save the rest of humanity. I will go, said Lieutenant Park So-young. You will need someone with bridge experience to pilot the infiltration ship. I volunteer as well, added Dr. Lee. You will need someone who understands the weapon's technical systems. And me, said Captain Choi Min-ho through the communication screen. If you are going to sabotage something the size of a moon, you will need someone who knows how to break things. One by one, other volunteers stepped forward. Commander Chen, who had initially opposed the plan. Han Ji-woo from the communications department. Even Captain Rodriguez volunteered, though Admiral Kim refused to let the station commander go on. Such a dangerous mission. Within an hour, they had 12 volunteers for the deep strike mission. Admiral Kim felt proud and heartbroken at the same time. These people were willing to die to protect others, just like he had once been willing to do. All right, people. We have work to do. Dr. Lee, I need technical specifications for modifying. A ship to look captured but still functional. Captain Choi, work with the engineering teams to create convincing damage that will not actually disable our systems. What about the main fleet, sir? Asked Lieutenant Park. How do we hold off 1,500 Devourer ships while the infiltration team is away? Admiral Kim looked at the tactical display again. The approaching enemy fleet would arrive in less than 18 hours. His remaining ships would have to survive long enough for the deep strike mission to succeed. We use every trick we have learned, electromagnetic pulse attacks, individual ship tactics, and anything else we can think of. Our job is to keep the Devourers busy and prevent them from reinforcing their construction site. Sir, what if the infiltration mission fails? Then we all die fighting, and hopefully someone else will find a way to stop the Star Killer weapon. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. Engineers worked to modify the infiltration ship while the volunteers prepared for their mission. Meanwhile, the main fleet prepared for what might be their final battle. Admiral Kim stood in the observation deck watching the work crews prepare for war. 6 months ago, he had been a janitor pushing a cleaning cart through empty corridors. Now he was responsible for the survival of the human species. But as he watched his people work together, he felt something he had not experienced in 5 years. Hope. Not because their plan was likely to succeed, but because humans were willing to sacrifice everything for each other. That willingness to fight impossible odds, to think creatively, under pressure, and to act individually when group tactics failed. That was what made humanity special. The Devourers might have superior technology and larger fleets, but they had never faced an enemy quite like humans before. Admiral Kim, Lieutenant Park's voice came through the communication system. The infiltration ship is ready. We launch in 2 hours. Understood. And Lieutenant, thank you. For what, sir? For reminding me why we fight. As he watched the modified ship launch toward Devourer territory, Admiral Kim prepared for the battle that would determine humanity's fate. Win or lose, they would face it on their own terms, using their own methods and following their own individual courage. The Devourers were about to learn what happened when they threatened the one species in the galaxy that refused to follow the rules. The infiltration ship drifted through space looking like a broken wreck. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several sections appeared to be completely destroyed. Inside the hidden compartments, 12 volunteers waited in the darkness as their ship approached the Devourer construction site. Admiral Kim Woo-jin had volunteered to lead the mission despite protests from his officers. He could not ask others to die for a plan he had created without sharing the risk himself. Now, squeezed into a maintenance compartment with Lieutenant Park So-young and Dr. Lee Hyun-woo, he wondered if he had made the right choice. "Admiral, we are approaching the construction site," whispered Han Ji-woo from the communication station. "You need to see this." Through the ship's hidden cameras, they could see the Devourer weapon for the first time. It was even more terrifying than Dr. Lee had described. The structure stretched across space like a mechanical moon, covered with organic-looking towers and energy conduits. Thousands of Devourer ships moved around it like insects tending a hive. "How are we supposed to destroy something that massive?" whispered Captain Choi Min-ho. Dr. Lee pointed to the center of the structure. "The quantum power core should be in the central section. If we can overload it, the entire weapon will tear itself apart." "Getting to the center will not be easy," Admiral Kim observed. "Look at all those ships providing security." Their infiltration ship was pulled into a docking bay along with dozens of other captured vessels. Through the cameras, they could see Devourer creatures moving through the bay, inspecting the new arrivals. The aliens looked even more horrible, up close. They had multiple arms, rows of sharp teeth, and eyes that glowed with hunger. "They are scanning each ship," reported Lieutenant Park. "Our modifications are holding up so far." The scan passed over their vessel without stopping. The Devourers apparently saw nothing suspicious about another damaged ship brought in for processing. After several tense minutes, the security teams moved on to examine other captured vessels. "All right, people," Admiral Kim whispered. "We move in teams of 3. Captain Choi takes the engineering team to locate the power core. Dr. Lee takes the technical team to figure out how to overload it. I will take the security team to clear a path." They waited until the docking bay was empty, then quietly cut their way out of the hidden compartments. The Devourer construction site was even more massive from the inside. Corridors stretched in every direction, and the walls pulsed with organic energy patterns. "This place feels alive," whispered Han Ji-woo. "Because it is alive," Dr. Lee replied. "The entire structure is grown rather than built. It is like being inside a gigantic creature." They moved through the corridors as quietly as possible, following Dr. Lee's scanner toward the central power core. The route took them deeper into the structure, past chambers filled with strange machinery and pools of glowing liquid. "Admiral," Captain Choi's voice came through their communication devices. "We found the power core, but there is a problem." "What kind of problem?" "It is not just a power source. The entire core is surrounded by a control center with hundreds of Devourer operators. We cannot get close without fighting through heavy resistance." Admiral Kim felt his heart sink. They had known the mission would be dangerous, but he had hoped they could complete it with stealth rather than direct combat. 12 humans against hundreds of Devourers was not a fair fight. "Dr. Lee, how long do you need to overload the power core once we reach it?" "At least 10 minutes. Maybe 15 if the quantum containment systems are more complex than I expected." "Captain Choi, how many Devourers are guarding the control center?" "I count at least 200, possibly more in the surrounding areas." Admiral Kim was quiet, for a moment, thinking through their options. They could try to fight their way to the power core, but 12 people could not hold off 200 enemies for 15 minutes. They could try to find another way to sabotage the weapon, but Dr. Lee had been clear that the power core was the only vulnerable point. That left only one option. "Change of plans," he said into his communication device. "We split up. Half the team creates a distraction to draw the guards away from the power core. The other half gets Dr. Lee to the quantum containment system. Sir, that means the distraction team will be completely outnumbered, Lieutenant Park pointed out. I know, but it is the only way to give Dr. Lee enough time to complete the sabotage. There was silence on the communication channel as everyone understood what Admiral Kim was really saying. The distraction team would be fighting a hopeless battle to buy time for the others. It was a suicide mission within a suicide mission. I will lead the distraction team, Admiral Kim said. No, sir, Lieutenant Park replied firmly. You need to stay with Dr. Lee to coordinate the sabotage. I will take the distraction team. So will I, added Captain Choi. You will need someone who knows how to cause maximum chaos with minimum resources. And me, said Han Ji-woo. You will need communication support. One by one, 6 volunteers chose to join the distraction team. They knew they were choosing to die so that their friends might have a chance to complete the mission. All right, people, Admiral Kim said quietly. The distraction team moves in 5 minutes. Dr. Lee's team waits for the explosions, then heads for the power core. Lieutenant Park looked directly at Admiral Kim before she left. Sir, make sure our sacrifice means something. I will. Thank you, Lieutenant. All of you. The distraction team moved toward the outer sections of the control center. Admiral Kim watched them go, knowing he would probably never see any of them again. These people had chosen to die for strangers they would never meet, on worlds they had never seen. 5 minutes later, explosions began echoing through the structure. Lieutenant Park's team had started their attack on the guard positions. Alarms began ringing throughout the construction site as Devourer forces rushed to respond to the threat. Now, Admiral Kim whispered. Dr. Lee's team moved toward the now lightly defended power core. The quantum containment system was a massive sphere of crystalline material surrounded by control panels and monitoring equipment. It hummed with barely contained energy that made Admiral Kim's teeth ache. This is more complex than I expected, Dr. Lee said as he examined the control systems. I need at least 20 minutes to safely overload the containment field. We may not have 20 minutes. Do whatever you can. Through the control center's windows, Admiral Kim could see the battle raging in the outer corridors. Lieutenant Park's team was fighting desperately against overwhelming odds, using every piece of cover and every tactical trick they knew. But there were simply too many enemies. Admiral, Han Ji-woo's voice came through the communication system, broken by static and explosions. We cannot hold them much longer. Understood. Keep fighting. Dr. Lee worked frantically at the control panels, his hands flying over alien interfaces as he tried to understand the quantum containment systems. Sweat dripped down his face as the sounds of battle grew closer. I think I can create a cascade failure, he said finally. But I need someone to manually adjust the quantum field generators while I work on the main controls. It has to be done from inside the containment chamber. Admiral Kim looked at the crystalline sphere. Inside, energy swirled like a trapped star. Anyone who entered that chamber would be exposed to lethal radiation within seconds. How long would someone need to stay inside? 3 minutes, maybe 4. And they would survive how long? Dr. Lee's face was grim. Maybe 2 minutes before the radiation becomes fatal. The sound of weapons fire was getting closer. Through the communication system, they could hear Lieutenant Park's team still fighting, but their voices were getting weaker. Admiral, Captain. Choi's voice crackled through the static. We are down to 3 people. The Devourers are breaking through our positions. Admiral Kim looked around at his remaining team members. Dr. Lee needed to stay at the controls. The other team members were needed to hold the control room against any Devourers who made it past the distraction team. I will go into the containment chamber, Admiral Kim said. Sir, that is a death sentence, one of his team members protested. So is letting this weapon become operational. Dr. Lee, walk me through what I need to do. The next few minutes were a blur of technical instructions and preparation. Dr. Lee explained how to manually adjust the quantum field generators while Admiral Kim put on a radiation suit that would buy him perhaps an extra minute of life. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park's voice came through the communication system one last time. "The Devourers have overrun our position. We are falling back to the final checkpoint." "Understood, Lieutenant. Thank you for everything." There was a pause. Then Lieutenant Park's voice again, calmer now. "It has been an honor serving with you, sir." "The honor was mine." Admiral Kim sealed his helmet and walked toward the containment chamber door. As it opened, waves of heat and radiation washed over him. The energy inside was beautiful and terrible, like looking into the heart of a star. Beginning manual adjustments. "Now," he reported. The work was surprisingly difficult. The quantum field generators were heavy and required precise positioning. Admiral Kim's radiation suit began beeping warnings almost immediately, but he ignored them and focused on Dr. Lee's instructions. "First generator positioned, moving to the second." Outside the containment chamber, he could hear weapons fire as his remaining team members fought off Devourer forces that had broken through Lieutenant Park's line. His friends were dying to buy him these precious minutes. "Second generator positioned. How much more time do you need, Dr. Lee?" "2 more minutes. The cascade is building, but it needs to reach critical mass." Admiral Kim moved to the third generator. His hands were starting to shake from radiation exposure, and his vision was getting blurry. The suit's warning beeps had become one continuous alarm. "Third generator positioned. Starting on the fourth." "Admiral, your radiation exposure is approaching lethal levels," Dr. Lee warned. "Just tell me when the cascade is ready." The fourth generator was the heaviest. Admiral Kim's muscles felt weak, and he could taste blood in his mouth. But he forced himself to lift the massive device and position it according to Dr. Lee's specifications. "Fourth generator positioned. Status report. Cascade approaching critical mass, 30 more seconds." Through the containment chamber's crystal walls, Admiral Kim could see Devourer forces entering the control room. His remaining team members were fighting desperately, but they were vastly outnumbered. "Admiral, we are out of time," one of his team members shouted. "The Devourers are at the main controls. Dr. Lee, trigger the cascade now." "It is not ready yet. We need 15 more seconds." "We do not have 15 seconds." Admiral Kim looked around the containment chamber and made his final decision. Instead of waiting for the cascade to build naturally, he grabbed the nearest quantum field generator and threw it directly into the energy core. The result was immediate and catastrophic. The controlled quantum reaction became uncontrolled in an instant. Energy exploded outward from the core, overwhelming the containment systems and beginning to tear apart the structure of the weapon itself. "Cascade initiated," Dr. Lee shouted over the growing noise. "Everyone evacuate immediately." But Admiral Kim could not evacuate. The radiation had done too much damage to his body. He collapsed against the containment chamber wall and watched as the weapon began to destroy itself around him. Through the communication system, he could hear his surviving team members fighting their way toward escape pods. Dr. Lee was shouting coordinates and technical instructions. Someone was calling his name, but the voices were getting farther away. The last thing Admiral Kim saw was the quantum energy expanding outward like a second sun, consuming the Devourer weapon and everything around it. The structure that had taken months to build was destroyed in seconds, along with the thousands of Devourer ships surrounding it. 3 days later, the surviving members of the infiltration team returned to the human fleet with news of the mission's success. The Starkiller weapon was gone, and the remaining Devourer forces were retreating to deep space. Admiral Kim's sacrifice had saved not just the human colonies, but potentially every inhabited world in the galaxy. The memorial service was attended by representatives from dozens of species, including the Velkari and Thumon, who had returned after hearing of humanity's victory. But the most fitting memorial was not the ceremony or the monument. It was the new alliance that formed between humans and other species, based on the recognition that sometimes the most unlikely heroes could change the course of history. The Wu Jin Protocol became standard teaching in military academies across 3 species. It emphasized individual creativity, unconventional thinking, and the willingness to sacrifice for others. Most importantly, it taught that heroism could come from anywhere, even from someone who was just there to clean. On the Seoul Prosperity mining station, a simple plaque was installed in the maintenance bay where Admiral Kim had once pushed his cleaning cart. It read, "Kim Woo-jin, he was. Just there to clean until the galaxy needed him to lead." Below that, in smaller text, were the words that had become humanity's motto in their new role as defenders of the galaxy: individual courage, collective strength, universal hope. The janitor who had become an admiral was gone, but his legacy lived on in every person who chose to act when others needed help, regardless of their title or position. In the end, that was the most human thing of all.